put the recordings on. All right, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for coming in as usual. Very early, but you make it, and being Sunday, we can appreciate the effort that you guys are putting in. Okay, so today we're going to look at the chapter. I think it's chapter 11. Let me put it up, and then maybe we'll go to a burning issue as well. Let's see. Okay. Share slide. Okay. So we're going to chapter 11, which is a business, government, and regulation. I hope you can see it. Can you all see it, please?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, cool. So that's what we're going to. But before that, we had a case study, and I was actually telling Nawaz that although it's an unfortunate situation, I think it's come at the right time for our class, for the benefit of our class. Just because we just had a class, a session last week. Now I've posted the link to the chat, space. So those of you who haven't actually seen it, for the evaluation, faculty evaluation, you can actually click on the link and then, do the grading. So I was actually, saying that it's an unfortunate situation, but it's come at the appropriate time because at least it's a fresh case study that we can actually look at and then have a conversation. And so before we start today's class, let's go back to it. And let me say that again, it's for class discussions. Don't feel intimidated. Don't feel constrained. Let's share ideas. But of course, those ideas are all staying in the past, all right? All right. So we all have heard, I'm sure most of us have heard the issue. We may have perspectives. You can present your initial reaction, all right? Let's listen to your initial reaction before your discussions on your class page, all right? So if you had any initial reaction, that was contrary to the discussion you had on your class page, let's hear your initial reaction and whether your position changed as you kind of discussed with your colleagues on your pages. Who would start? Let me just check there. Okay. Who's going to start?
Doc, please, what are we talking about?
Okay.
Is it
we're talking about a Hinchrist case. All right, the case that we just witnessed about, is it Tema Central or Tema West?
Tema West.
Tema West.
Yeah, the Tema West MP, who was apparently diagnosed, of having COVID, and the story says that he actually broke protocol, to go to the polling stations, and then when he won, he was jubilating with the people without nose mask, and so there was pressure for him to resign. He did, and the president, accepted it. Now people are calling for possible persecution, which I doubt is going to happen. But from the perspective that we studied, I mean, last week we talked about ethics and the way we could be in dilemma and the sources that we have to draw our ethical decisions from. Now, we also spoke about, the amoral, the immoral, moral manager. And so I'm asking that, was Ahinchrist in a position or the case at hand, was it at all a dilemma in the beginning when he was at home because he's been told to confine himself at home, but he decided to go to the polling stations, and his justification was that because he was not showing any symptoms, and he thought that he could manage himself because he knew how to carry himself, and so he thought that he could carry himself in a way that he would not be a danger to unsuspected, people. Obviously, there's a public outcry that was irresponsible. Now, I want to check up from your perspectives and those who had initial reaction or initial perspectives to it before I hear there was a huge engagement on your platform, before your platform, and whether your position changed, as and when you had that conversation. So maybe we can start, we can just dedicate 10 minutes to this conversation and then we can start. So who want to
Doc, my hand is up.
Doc.
Linda. Yakubu.
Doc. I just want to correct something.
Yeah.
So before we go.
Yeah.
Okay. The pictures and the video that is on the social media.
Yeah.
To be frank and honest with the class here, those are old pictures of 2018 festivities we had in December.
Okay.
So the pictures that actually show he went to the registration center, there was no dancing. He only went there to look, observe.
Yeah.
And then move away.
Okay. So that's a very important information. So
all the videos are old pictures way back in 2018. Thank you.
So that's how media actually, kind of influences the way we think. All right, Linda, let's start from you.
Okay, so my initial reaction when I heard about it was that it was wrong. I mean, on the surface, per my assessment, I thought it was wrong. But you just asked the question as to whether he was in a dilemma. Did I get you right, please?
That's correct. Do you think he was in a dilemma?
Well, he must have been. That's if I get what you, because you just said that if you are in a dilemma, you should choose what would benefit the people.
Yeah.
Right. So in this case, what would benefit the people for him, I think, is two-sided. In the sense that he's a leader. And so if he does not go out seen publicly to be supporting what is being done, especially in his constituency, it would look as though he's not being responsible. So he had to step out there for people to see him. And also knowing that people did not know his status, he felt that it was safe. And per his own interview, he said that he didn't get close to anybody. Akubu has also confirmed that the pictures are old. So now I think that has changed. I don't know whether I can speak about it being immoral or amoral.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Or you answer that question?
Yeah, you can. So which one is different?
So I think that I don't think it's amoral. I think that it's immoral. If it's amoral, then it means that he has no sense of whether it is bad or wrong. But he definitely must have known whether it was bad or wrong. I mean, good or bad. So for me, I think that it's immoral.
Okay, excellent. All right, Gideon.
Okay, Doc, good morning.
Morning, Gideon.
Yeah, I want to ask Yakubu a question before I probably make my point. I want to ask Yakubu if prior to the primaries, how was he positive or it was tested positive after the primaries?
Good question. Good question. He had the test on 23rd of June, and we had the primaries on the 20th of June. So it was after the 23rd, it was on the 23rd or after the 23rd that he got to know he was positive.
So could it be the case that
I'm coming. So on Linda's aspect, it is immoral because the visiting of the polling registration center was done on the 30th, the first day of registration. And based on what Linda said, in the politics, sometimes there's pressure from your constituents to see you in action in certain things. That is where he erred. And the media also play a game on him.
Okay, so Yakubu, we should take the media out because we're discussing the decision as an example.
It's immoral. Because as a 30th, he knows he was positive.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yeah,
so,
continue.
So like I was saying, like we all agreed, I think it's an agreement that it's immoral. Mm-hmm. Personally, I was thinking that, well, he goofed even in his he goofed 2 times. Like even in his quest to grant interviews to the media, it was wrong. Because he had issued a statement. So he had issued a statement that he was trying to make the situation as though he wasn't in the ICU. Mm-hmm. Because the media reported that he was in ICU. Mm-hmm. So he was just trying to allay their fears that he was not in ICU.
Yeah.
So he had issued a statement that, well, I'm not in ICU. I was admitted overnight and I was discharged around 11 a.m. Mm-hmm. And so I'm now at home. Mm-hmm. That I think should have ended it all. Yeah. But to some extent, I think he was also being truthful, because not everyone would have openly said that he was positive. Okay. Because when the journalist asked him, he could have said that at the time he didn't know. Mm-hmm. No one would have faulted him. Mm-hmm. Because no one knew his health conditions. Yeah. You could have said that he didn't know he had tested positive, or it wasn't, the report had not reached him. And no one could have said, because your health issues are personal. Yeah. But he was being truthful to some extent, that he told everyone publicly that at the time he went there, he had tested positive, and he was going around observing the protocol. So to some extent, you can give him some, you can cut him some slack, but then I think his actions were immoral.
Okay, excellent. Now, David.
Hello, Doc. I want to look at it from Manuel Kant's view.
Yeah.
He said, act in a way that you would want all others to act in the same way. Mm-hmm. So it brings to mind the ontological principle. Mm-hmm. So the question is that the way he acted, assuming all others who were in the quarantine centers had also come out to do similar things, mm-hmm. either to join people in celebration, mm-hmm. at the naming ceremony or funeral or what have you, mm-hmm. and probably ended up infecting others. Mm-hmm. Would that have been right or ethical or not? That's mm-hmm. the way I want to look at it.
Excellent, David. So do you think he was in an ethical? He was in a dilemma.
From what Yakubu has said, in fact, my perspective seems to have changed a little, because initially we thought he knew that he was positive and was only trying to, he's full of exuberance.
Yeah.
My man.
No, you're right.
One man who is full of very exuberant.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe he was trying to test the law to see. But if indeed he knew that he was positive, then I'm just examining it in the light of what Kant said, Immanuel Kant, that you act in a way that you would expect everybody to act in that same way.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Succinct. All right, Romeo.
Yeah, Doc. So I will start on this premise that the law is no respecter of any person. Mm-hmm. The president has given an executive order for us to all comply with the protocol as far as COVID is concerned. Mm-hmm. So as a leader, he is the first person to demonstrate that responsibility for his constituents to follow. Mm-hmm. So I think as we speak right now, the law must be tested on him, so that he is going to serve as a deterrent to others. Because
so the question at stake is, do you think he faced a dilemma, and whether his actions was moral, immoral, or amoral?
So I think that his action is immoral, because he's doing it for his selfish interest. Mm-hmm. So that is his dilemma, because he thinks that he must, retain his seat. And for me, it's immoral on his part to do that.
All right, Samuel.
Yes, Doc. So this is the thing with Carlos's case. I think he acted very, very, I won't say ignorant, but there was a lot of self-interest. Mm-hmm. I think it was immoral, and simply because if you compare that with what has just happened between yesterday and today, with the president's case.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all heard and read.
Yeah.
The president, from the news, he has tested negative, but he has taken a responsible decision of isolating himself.
That's correct.
Now, if you're a deputy minister and a member of parliament, and you're standing in an election, and you know your status. Notice in the communique that he released, he did not say anything about his status. He just talked about not being in the ICU.
Yeah.
If you read it carefully, you know that he never actually said anything about his status.
Yeah.
But in the interview when it was granted, and then he went ahead and talked about him being positive, and he was trying to, in all his talk about going around and seeing, observing the registration process, he was trying to justify himself in that, because he observed the protocols and he did this and did that, stood 1 meter away and all that. At a point, he even said, he didn't get close, and he gave the impression that he sat in his vehicle.
Yeah.
And then the host asked him categorically, "Did you step out of the vehicle?" And he had to be honest about it. Say, no, he actually stepped out of his vehicle. But if you listen to how he said it before, you would think that he was actually sitting in his vehicle. So he was still trying to paint the situation and make it seem good.
Excellent.
Now, so if the issue of immorality is just very, very clear. It was immoral, and it was ignorant, and it was selfish. That's my view of it. In terms of a dilemma, whether he faced a dilemma, I think he did, and he made the wrong decision. I definitely think he faced the dilemma. Knowing my status, so should I do this, blah blah blah, and all that. The thing that Yakubu said is politics. There's pressures. He wants people to see him running for office, so that's where the self-interest comes in. But I think he could have delegated. Because he has a team, he can have delegated.
Yeah.
So that's
a very strong point.
And if he's giving himself, it's 14 days. If after 7 days you can go around and show yourself and do everything and do all the publicity you want to do.
I think that's a very strong point you made about delegation. And okay, so good point. Let me come in, Gideon, before, because you've spoken earlier. So let me come in before. Now the issue about immorality or morality, we've established that. That's clear. Now, the issue about, what you call a dilemma. Now, let's look at this scenario. I mean, at what point does somebody get tested? That's when you perhaps had experienced some kind of, symptoms, or you've been close to somebody who has. Now, in these two situations, you would almost argue that the possibility of you contracting perhaps is high, That means that in your decision making, whether you should step out or not, you have to err, on the side of caution to say, until I get to know the status, because you had, one, been in contact with somebody, like the president said, or two, you had actually experienced some symptoms. Now, these two scenarios shouldn't actually put you in a dilemma.
Indeed.
Exactly. They should clearly give you signals. And I like the point that you made, that on that basis, he could have actually delegated. And like, Linda said, perhaps the idea that he has to meet the constituents, and because it's, to give them that hope that, because he's a leader, he's contested. I mean, by giving your constituent a reason why you didn't show up, I think makes much more sense.
Indeed.
And actually being there and saying, "Oh, I knew I couldn't infect you." Now, we're examining how leadership make decisions and the perspectives that you're supposed to take. And for me, when there are certain signposts or there are certain indicators that actually shrinks you far to the left more than far to the right, you have to take decisions that align with the left, not the right. Or when indicators or the sign actually swings you far to the right, you probably want to take the decision that is aligned to far to the right, because you have absolute, and very, cogent or compelling reasons to give. And in this case, his reason not to be at the constituency will be so compelling, and in fact will be so exemplary to the constituents, that the reason why I didn't come there was because I had already done a test and I didn't know my status. And that's why I didn't come. I think that would have been an exemplary.
Very
So when we're talking about, and that's why I was telling you about when we're taking the decision, let's flip it, 360 degrees and look at which one is the most compelling. Because if he faced the dilemma, then the question is, perhaps he didn't have wriggling room to actually think whether the decision was right or not. But for me, I think that there were clear signs of, absolute decision making, which he perhaps flouted because he thought maybe he didn't show. It's like a company who is actually hidden, an expiry date of a product. All right. Now, you knew the product is expired. There are signs on it. But because you knew that people would not have the ability to detect it, that's why you actually, went ahead to push the product into the market. That is completely immoral, and there is no dilemma at all. I don't know whether my perspective is right. Those of you who have a different view, you can actually position it. Yakubu, you want to say something? Samuel,
Yes,
you have to stand up. I don't know whether you want to say something as well.
Yes, Doc.
Okay, yeah.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Yakubu.
Okay, it's very good, but this is an information that's not privy to a lot of people, but this class should be privy to it.
Yeah, and it stays here.
Yes, and it stays here. I was so much disturbed when I saw the pictures on WhatsApp platform when he visited the registration center on the 30th. I'm a electoral area coordinator in the constituency.
Yeah.
And I'm a caucus member of the coordinators.
For Tema West.
Yeah. In managing the constituency.
Okay.
And he had mentioned to us that he was not feeling well. And he was supposed to come and meet my electoral area people after the victory because we had given him 96% of the vote. So because of his health, we canceled it. And so we expected him to have delegated the constituency chairman and few of us to go to wherever there's going to be problem with the registration to talk to them and then find a way of letting the constituents know why he himself is not here in a diplomatic way.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, he did it without our knowledge.
That is a Zubira.
And that is where the problem is.
Yeah.
And that aspect is where I will call is immoral because you know your situation.
Yeah.
You shouldn't even have appeared there at all.
Yeah.
And the delegation aspect, we have put a stop to it, and we are managing it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great point. All right. Yeah, Samuel. In fact, let's see who else. Okay, Samuel, let's go. The last four, when we take that, then we'll start the class. Yeah. Okay, Samuel, go on.
So, in terms of dilemma, the reason why I think he definitely was in a dilemma is because, I mean, as a human being, there has to be a dilemma for there to be a certain moment of indecision before you make the decision. I mean, you could have all the facts clear to you, but then for you to make another decision opposing the facts, it means that there was a fight and a conflict in your head.
Yeah.
It means there were other reasons that you were also considering.
Yeah.
There being the state of dilemma. So I think he did experience that to a certain degree, to even actually make a decision that we think was immoral and quite frankly senseless.
Excellent.
And then put people in danger.
Excellent. Yeah. Good point. Okay. Who else hands is up? Let me just open up. My system sometimes goes up. Okay, yeah. Linda, before I come to Gideon and Daniel.
I'd like to ask a question. Could the issue of stigmatization put him in a state of dilemma? Could that be considered?
I suppose I suppose yes, but I mean, telling somebody
Doc,
that
I actually don't think so at all. I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
I think he could have twisted this thing beautifully for politics, even.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Telling somebody that you're not well and you can't be there, I don't see where the stigma would be.
And then after you survive, and then you come with all the exuberance, the people will rally behind you.
But the point that Linda is saying is that, we have different, everybody and the way they take things differently.
Well, that's
somebody like me, I don't think that it would be difficult for me to say that this. But there are some people who actually will have the difficulty. So I suppose there could be the issue of stigmatization and thinking, but even when it comes to the political communication, and as a lot of you have reiterated, I mean, the idea that telling somebody, the media, that I'm not in ICU is enough. You do not have to even explain yourself. The report says you're in ICU. You are not in ICU. Clearly, they could see you talk to them. So that is an example of saying that you are not in ICU. So you do not have to actually go to that extent of explaining yourself. It was needless. But I think the issue of youthful exuberance comes in here. This is a guy who is actually pumped up almost every time, right? So he felt that he could actually exhibit a lot more beyond the doubting, case that he's not in ICU, and that's the case.
Right.
So yeah, Daniel. Daniel, let's listen to you.
Good morning, Doc. Good morning, guys. Doc, I don't think there was any dilemma here. I think he made a conscious choice to go against lay down principles and lay down protocols. You had the virus. It's advised for everyone to just self-isolate or remain in an isolation center. He made a decision to go to a place where people were. There was no dilemma at all. If I have $100,000 and I'm choosing between buying a Range Rover and maybe a Jaguar, that could be a dilemma based on maybe what taste I have. But if I'm thinking of spending money on a car when maybe I have a wife who has an illness that requires medical attention and requires money, that's not a dilemma.
Yeah.
Excellent. Otherwise, you can't rely on people's moral compasses for these kind of determinations. There are rules and there are ethics, established ones. So if we leave to the individual, anything can be a dilemma.
Excellent. And that's how I think I support Daniel's position clearly, because there had already been a laid out, a process, protocols. And as we said, a conventional one, and then of course the test, the test case one. The president had already laid down, certain protocol. So that protocol is supposed to even guide you in your decision making. So the idea of dilemma, it's a little bit,
I think, Doc, even when you look at the definition of dilemma, it actually says a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially ones that are equally undesirable. And I think in this case, it doesn't really even fall there. So in fact, it's true. He didn't have to be in a dilemma, and I don't think so. I think it was just selfish. That's all. It was just being selfish.
All right, great. But these discussions, we're having them because it has to guide our own decisions as well. So we face situations. Let's look at the case study as we're discussing, and the way we're discussing it, in order that it can actually guide our own decisions. All right, Ajara, before I come.
Good morning, Doc. Good morning, colleagues. Yes, I honestly agree with Dan and Co. I don't think he was in a dilemma. Before I say this, I must say that he's one of my board of directors at my office, and I have a very, I really like him, and he's a very good person, personally. But when it comes to the ethical point of view, I think he just acted very carelessly, to use the word lightly.
Yeah.
Let's first of all ask ourselves the caliber of the person. Who is he? This is a lawmaker. He should know better, because he's a lawmaker, and he was part of the people who came with the law that whoever breached that protocol should be even fined, and even subject to
jailed,
subject to imprisonment. So you can't tell me that he wasn't conscious of the result, the consequences.
Excellent.
And you were clearly asked to self-isolate. And you were self-isolated with people like Sir John and look at the critical condition under which they were.
Yeah.
So I think it was he should have known better than any other person. And let's be honest, we wouldn't have been having this discussion if it were, excuse me, say a pastor who had gone to do this, or another person who had gone to do this would have been very harsh on the person.
Yeah.
Because we have been in this country, and this whole thing, there are quite a number of people who have been imprisoned and fined because they breached that is. I know personally pastors who were fined.
Yeah.
I know because I am in ministry.
Yeah.
So I say this with so much annoyance.
Yeah.
That if it be a pastor, you know that's something likely like this.
Yeah.
And besides, were the consequence, your constituents, were they aware of your state or your status? You
that should
expose
just
them
be
to
jail.
harm.
I mean,
Because
so
I am
that
somewhere and I'm excited that I voted for you and you won. And I come running to you and imagine, even if I was there, if I was in Tema West, I'll be the first person to run to go and hug him.
Excellent.
But I wouldn't know, and you're not ready to tell us.
Yeah.
Until you were in a fix.
Yeah, calm down.
Yeah.
Your condition.
No, she's annoyed. She's annoyed.
Yeah, it's pumped up.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I must say, I have Nawaz is on the line, and I want to tell you how I was defending him in the office. And besides, I have traveled with him on quite a number of missions, investment missions.
Yeah.
And he's a very good friend,
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this with like any string that, but I'm being very honest.
No, I agree with you. And this is the candidness that we have to have.
Just to round up, no one is above the law.
Yeah.
No one is above the law. And even if no one is above the law, irrespective of your position, you are not above the law.
Sure.
Great point. And for me, these are, when people are that critical, this is your best friend. You do not want people who would actually say, praises when you go wrong. So people who can be critical of your behavior are the ones you rather draw them closer, because they are the ones. So I think I really like your position and the way you have actually clearly articulated your decision.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
I think
Doc.
you've not seen me.
Yeah, now
Doc.
I was gonna call you. Yeah, now
Yeah, Doc. I want to speak on behalf of the media. I've heard a whole lot of people saying that he was tricked by the media and all that. I was privy to listen to his first interview on Asempa FM with Obi, and the second one with Umaru Sanda. And there wasn't at any point that he was forced to give an answer. With the Asempa FM interview, he brought it up to show that he was in good health. When Obi asked him if he was in ICU or not. So in making his statement that he was healthy, and he said that he even went to polling stations to go and check what was going on. He wasn't asked. He wasn't asked. And even with the Umar Sanda interview on CTFM, it was the same thing. He wasn't asked. And he said it by himself. So, and I even think the government is being lenient with him, just resigning. Other people are being prosecuted and fined. Why is he not passing through the same thing? But he was forced to resign. Just like that. If you do that, you are not being fair to the ordinary Ghanaian. If it was an ordinary person, the person would be fined and prosecuted.
Yeah, you're right. Great point. I think we'll move on. But let me make the point also that we don't discuss just in it vein, all right? We are discussing so that it will guide our own, practices and our own decisions. One of the saddest things is for you to talk about somebody, and when it gets to your turn, you're not able to exercise that kind of judgment. That is the sad part. So you want to make sure that these conversations would also guide our own behaviors and our own, decision making. Are you with me?
Right.
Okay,
right.
Excellent. Okay, so today, let's go back to today's subject, which we're looking at the relationship between government, business, and then the thing that we cherish or don't cherish as business people, regulation. All right. So we're going to look at the relationship between these two institutions and then the act of regulation. Now, obviously, the outcomes, it's here, the learning outcomes. Now, when we look at the relationship between business and government, who can actually give us, today Yao is not here, right? Yeah. Who can give us what do you call?
I am here, sir. I am here.
Hey, and it's strange that we haven't heard.
I have been blasting on the chat, but because I just didn't want to drift into the conversation. I don't agree with anybody. I don't agree with all of you, please.
Okay. Now we understand why. Okay. So, any brief history about government and business, from from our perspectives. I mean, since the days of PNDC to NDC to MPP, who can give us a brief history of the relationship of government and business so far? Who can give us a brief history? Okay, Yakubu.
Okay, to start with, as you stated, you mentioned PNDC era up to this time.
Mm-hmm.
During the PNDC era, we were not in a democratic system of governance.
Mm-hmm.
It was a military rulership.
Mm-hmm. You can from pre-PNDC, maybe in Nkrumah's days to now, if you have any background history.
Not too much from that point.
Okay, business and government relationship. Okay, yeah.
Okay, what we witnessing now during the democratic dispensation as to those days was that there wasn't any much democratic way of doing businesses in the country. Everything was on the backstop with the chairman of the PNDC and a few people around the chairmanship. And that brought this diversification concept into the country, where states could not manage state-owned enterprises again. And the international organizations came out with some suggestions that we should diversify the state-owned enterprises, which came out with the DIC committee, that diversity investment, something committee.
Implementation committee.
Committee, yes. And so from that point, when we move into the democratic era, there had been a lot of changes into the investment community or atmosphere in the country, whereby now there are regulations on how individual industries in terms of investments are handled. And there has been investment incentives to businesses to go to other geographical parts of the country to invest. And these regulations has helped the business community to a point that private ownership or private businesses have developed confidence in the country, that they decide to bring their capital or their money into the country. And with the NPP as a center-right government, which believes in free enterprise, has done a whole lot in terms of stabilizing the investment climate in the country, so that private businesses can go on.
Okay, Yakubu, let's come in here. I think you've had a nice opportunity to sneak in some campaign slangs. Okay, good point. So yes, just like Yakubu is explaining, I mean, if we look at the relationship between business and government, I think it's been a checkered one, all right from the beginning, independence and independence era. You realize that obviously the pre-independence era business was very much controlled by the the colonialist, and over time, when they actually passed on the reins of leadership, it became part of the Ghanaian government, i.e. the indigenous people's area of management. Now, obviously, there's a story about Nkrumah's 7-year development plan, which industrialization was very much a big part of it, and so established a lot of state-owned enterprises, which some of it is the GIHOC, which we call the Ghana Industrial Holding Company. So the state was very much top-heavy when it comes to business. I mean, the state controlled a number of sectors. But in that, you see that there was a purposeful state, induced development of certain sectors, and when you look at it, there was a conscious effort by the state to promote some local content, in order that we could actually use what, it's actually, grown here. Typical example is the story about Nkrumah's, love to see Ghana bauxite, being used, for smelting, etc. And then, of course, the other industries and how the local, content was used. So the state actually planted the feeders, like the state had farms that actually fed industry and onward, added value. So you realize that there was a deliberate effort by state to promote some sectors, At the same time, there were deliberate effort by state to actually reduce the potency and the capacity of some sectors. And when you roll over, the times to PNDC era, all right, as part of the democratization, and I think that's where, Yakubu, there must be a correction. The deregulation was as part of the democratization, requirement. All right. When the PNDC was preparing to to hand over the state to more democratic path, there was a requirement of deregulating the systems, of economic, status, and that includes things like the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, because you couldn't actually go into democracy with a state-owned media so powerful and dominant. All right, there must be certain participation. So they had to deregulate, and they had to actually deregulate the areas like telecoms, etc., in order that the government control could actually reduce, and also invite private participation. So it wasn't only deregulation, but also privatization. And that meant that certain, state institutions had to be given to private hands, not because state perhaps couldn't actually regulate or manage them better, but again, because we wanted to reduce government dominance. Because if government is actually managing all these, what happens is that there is the capacity for private participation is low. And when there's a low capacity for private participation, it is difficult to encourage democratization because people will not have the wherewithal to actually contest. And economic power is in itself political power, as we have actually been saying. All right. So over time, there had to be that deregulation and privatization policies, pushed forward as part of the democracy or the democratization process. Now, you realize that there were some industries that were promoted, like, at the time we saw Adjo Yankee, for example. There was, a conscious effort to promote textile, locally. So we saw the teachings of, textiles and other things, and then there had been instances where there had been, effort to reduce or to actually, suppress the growth of other industries. And typical example is tobacco. All right, globally, government through health policies or through the advice of health systems had tried as much as possible to actually reduce or to suppress the growth of tobacco, the tobacco industry or industries that are perceived to be harmful, to people. So when you look at the relationship between government and business, it is almost what you call a symbiotic relationship, all right, where business actually supports, government to prosper and to grow, and then government in turn supports business to prosper and to grow. So if you look at I think, was it 1992 or prior, after 1992? The Kumipreku, demonstration. What led to it was the VAT, or the VAT system. Now, that was one of the most tenuous, relationship between business and government, where government, thought that they could raise more money through the VAT system, which business disagreed, because business at the time thought that it could actually hamper or could actually, kind of have a negative effect on their activities. So very much the people didn't actually like the VAT, just like the businesses. But then typical Ghana, we didn't actually see, or even if there were lobbying of businesses, it was actually political power that actually descended on government, which President Nana now actually led, and Kwesi Pratt and Kwaku Baako, etc. So you see the interrelationship or the relationship between business and the political system, not only government even, but there is that type of relation. And in most cases, it hadn't been that smooth. All right, it hadn't been that smooth. It's been tenuous, but it had been helpful as well. So that's what we're looking at. So government's role in influencing business, obviously as a regulator of business that can determine the rules of the game. So in most cases, government actually come in because of its mandate to protect the people. Government is supposed to put down certain, rules in order that it can actually guide, the externalities, or it can actually guide businesses in order not to actually show up, the bad side of it. Obviously, as a major purchaser with buying power, that can affect business or industry survival. And we saw that in Kufuor's tenure when they brought the PSI, presidential special initiative. All right. Sorry. When they brought the presidential special initiative, PSI was typically for point 2. All right. Government, inducing certain sectors in order that they can actually, grow that sector, which, Alan Chemanton was heading. We saw the Cassava project. We saw, so many other projects under the PSI. Unfortunately, the PSI didn't survive, but that was exactly the point. How does government use its purchasing power to promote certain, sectors, in the system? And then it can elevate some industries while devaluing others, which we have made a point, and can create new businesses and industries through subsidies and privatization. That also, happens, as part of the government, and the business relationship. So when we go a step further, perhaps we can actually discuss this one. All right, the interaction of business, government, and the public. And when you look at the government-business relationship, it is not only about lobbying. What else do you think, are involved in this relationship, government-business relationship? What other points can you make, on that? Yeah. So from the conversation that we've had, what are some of the, relationship points do you think exist between government and business? Yeah, I'm waiting for you guys. I hope you're following the conversation. Hello?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. Yakubu, yeah, so yes, beyond lobbying, what other things?
Yeah, apart from lobbying, just like the way you mentioned, the business community, when they are organized and know their right, there are certain government policies and regulations that they can fight back. So that, because they are into the businesses, they know what they go through. Yeah. Whereas government is just an enabler to make businesses work.
Yeah.
So if they know in the business community what policy government is bringing or regulation government is bringing, it will not help them. Something like the Kumepreku will take place to bring government into right position, or to bring to government attention that the policy will not help the businesses. Hence, they will have issues in the system. That's what I can think immediately.
Excellent. So, okay, abracadabra. Hey, I haven't heard from you for a long time.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Sir, but I don't understand your question. I'm sorry. I really don't understand.
Okay, so we're discussing the relationship between government and business, and we're taking them point by point. So I'm asking that beyond lobbying, in 16 bullet point, what do you think you can capture the relationship, or what will you use to capture the relationship between government and business? So we'll talk about lobbying. Of course, it's one of the relationship between these two is that businesses lobby government, government also lobby business. But also we're talking about social development. All right. So business and government have a social development mandate to actually support that area. So I want you to give more of these points. Is that clear?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
thank
so
you.
mine will be on.
Okay. Abracadabra, let's hear.
Yes, so mine will be on having a stable environment,
exactly.
In terms of political stability.
Exactly.
And then the second one is on having a financial stability as well, in terms of the forex and all that. Yes.
Excellent. Fantastic. So political and economic stability. Yes. Yeah, Pfizer.
Oh, David here.
Yeah, Doc. So,
okay, David, Pfizer's hand was up. So after that, you come in.
Thank you. Let me give it to an senior man. Pfizer, go for it.
Yeah, Pfizer, Doc. Yes. So, aside what has been mentioned so far, I think there is also the bit where government enforces policies, or let me say, regulates the conduct of businesses by enforcing laws that regulate that industry.
Excellent.
And then I also bring in where a private business is conducting itself in a manner that is injurious to the public. Aside the public themselves may be raising issues with it, the law requires for government through maybe the regulatory agency to enforce or to whip the business community in line to stop them from pursuing conducts that are injurious to the citizens.
So there's an enforcement relationship. Now, before you come in, let me expand on Abracadabra's point so that in terms of when you guys are explaining, you know that you can stretch it. Now, when it comes to political stability, sometimes businesses may not see that a lot of it behoves on them, but it is because if there is unemployment in the system, it is the job of business to create employment and to establish or to ensure political stability. Of course, it is the job of government to provide an enabling environment. But you see, if there is no stability, businesses cannot thrive. So for me, I have always advocated that businesses in Ghana must have a roadmap to any government, whoever government that is in power, to tell them, how do we create jobs? Because some of the jobs that politicians actually propose sometimes, they are frankly unsustainable. Now, how do businesses in this country come together to provide a blueprint of sustainable, respectable job creation? And then tell government that quid pro quo, if you give us this percentage of benefits in terms of tax reliefs, etc., we would actually facilitate job creation in this manner. And that is a win, and that could actually ensure political stability, ensure economic stability. But you don't hear businesses speaking this language, perhaps for fear that they will be stigmatized, but because this government is in power, you are helping to support them to create jobs. It's not that we can be in opposition forever. That cannot be the narrative. Because elsewhere, I have seen businesses put proposals, and especially circa 2008, those of you who actually followed American politics, majority of the corporate America agreed to bring their businesses from China back to US in order that the US economy could be shored up, because it was, credit crunch was killing it. And frankly, Obama made gestures and said, if you bring your business from China back to US, this is the concessions I'm giving. And that is what actually led to this car, this electric car, what's the name?
Tesla.
Obama, the US government invested so much in Tesla because they needed certain new energy policies. They even invested in certain battery companies that could actually reduce US reliance on fossil fuel because of the fight with the Arabian countries, etc. So it behoves on business to actually support government to establish or to ensure political stability. But we don't hear our businesses speak. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the point I wanted to add, so that when you're actually explaining it, you could, expand on it. And so, yes, as Faisal talked about, we talked about enforcement relationship. Okay, Samuel.
Yes, I wanted to talk particularly about policy formulation.
Mm-hmm.
In that, for example, we have an entity like the GIPC that holds breakfast meetings quarterly, and the whole purpose of this breakfast meeting is so that businesses, CEOs, and captains of industry can engage government on certain policies that have already taken place and those that are in review and discussion, so that they could be amended, or they could be tweaked, or they could be adjusted to benefit the business community and create the right climate that will foster investment and business growth. And this is one of our very, very key events that run throughout the year and every quarter. So that's policy formulation. It's particularly for policy formulation.
Yeah. Okay. So policy formulation, and again, it could be under lobbying as well, isn't it? Isn't it a lobbying platform as well?
Well, it won't be because lobbying sometimes happens.
That's negative. Okay, I agree. Yes. Yeah, policy formulation relationship. Good point. Okay, so David Ajara, let me ask David to come in because he was speaking earlier. Then you can come in. All right, David.
Prof, I think the two earlier colleagues have mentioned those points. I also wanted to talk about government policy at checking dumping.
Okay, great. Ajara.
Yes, Doc. My point has to do with government ideology. In the case of some countries, some countries are more pro-capitalist, others are socialist, and of course the laissez-faire.
Yeah.
And it's government actually is an initiator and a catalyst when it comes to growth and development. Looking at the various impacts, be it microeconomic and both micro and micro. In terms of what is a public goods, in terms of what is monopolized, in terms of all that. For example, I'll give you a case study in what happened recently in the era of this COVID-19.
Yeah.
I work with Ghana Free Zones Authority, and as part of the government agenda, it's whichever company is under the free zones must have the ability to export at least 70% of your goods or service. So proud to, just with this issue of COVID-19 and all that, the government now mandated some of the apparel manufacturing companies under the free zone to now produce masks and to be for in-house for the local market, which was actually contrary to the mandate of the free zones. But government was able to have that power, that ability to step in and to massage it.
Excellent.
Sort of. So
emergency
that is the relationship from where I stand, what I see between state and markets.
Exactly. So that's a very good point about the creation in the government actually facilitating the emergence of a certain industry or certain product types. So clearly, if there hadn't been, that kind of intervention, we couldn't actually have had, we could have been importing these masks, etc. Right. So government and business relationship is also about, growth, and the emergence of certain sectors. That's a very good point. Ajara, you know Osikeni, right?
Yes.
Controversial Osikeni.
I can relate.
Okay. He's in my political marketing class. Yes.
Doc, can I just say something to support what you just said last?
Yeah.
Okay. In
Okay. Hello. Seems like I've lost you guys. Hello.
Look, I can hear you.
Bro, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Yakubu. Okay, great.
Okay. In 2008, AGI, Association of Ghana Industries, was having their 50th anniversary lecture. And in there, PV, the late PV being spoke, and Atia Menka also spoke. when what they told us was during the PNDC era, before we transited into the democracy dispensation, we had a referendum before.
Yeah.
And PV Obing and Apia Menka had come up together to support the AGI members. That any region and any district they go to talk about the referendum, the members of AGI should all support democracy. So that will enable them to have a level playing field, that government cannot bulldoze any policy on them.
Yeah.
That had actually helped them to be able to go to wherever they are here.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. All right, excellent. PD.
Yes, sir. So I think I just want to say a few points. I see government and business relationship as a complementary.
Yeah.
In that business exists to make profit.
Yeah.
Which is to maximize the worth of the shareholders to some extent. So they are seeking growth. And then government also exists to ensure that there's economic stability and there's growth for all the citizens. All right. So I think it is not a competition.
No.
They do similar things to promote the welfare of the individuals.
Excellent.
So when I see that companies are competing with the government, is it that they don't get the point, especially between MTN and this communication ministry, you know.
But is it a competition? I don't think it's a competition.
They seem to fight, you know, like.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of looking at the business interest, government positions. And you know, Apple and the U.S. government have been in such similar position before. When the U.S. government wanted to take control of Apple's security system because of a perceived suicide bomber who had actually attempted, and then the U.S. intelligence agency couldn't decode the guy's phone. Now, they instructed Apple to actually hand over the security code and then Apple said no, because it would actually infringe on their, security capacities. So it is not a competition, but it is the perspective that you want to sustain consumers' confidence. Because if Apple had actually gone ahead to give in, the brand would have collapsed. Samsung would have overtaken Apple by now, long ago, because you would actually undermine the confidence of the consumer in your product. And that was the right thing they did. I don't think MTN is wrong. I don't think it's wrong at all. They have to actually come out with a very competent debate why they couldn't actually allow the government to do what it's doing. And in a very democratic institutions or society, that's what happens. Of course, if your debate or your position is not competent enough, the government can win. And when they win, you have no choice, but you have to present a very competent, position. So I don't think they're actually in competition. Yeah.
Bro, can I ask the question in a non-purely democratic way, or you want me to stick to in a purely democratic environment?
We're talking about government, but of course the status quo now is a democracy. So maybe you want to.
I mean not the democracy on paper. I mean the real democracy we practice. Because my question is, I see. It's a question. I see the government-business relationship like this. A landlord has a compound house, which he rents out. That is the kind of relationship we have. Businesses either play by the government's book, either publicly or privately or any way, or they get kicked out. Because the land is for the house is for the government. I'm not talking about NDC or NPP.
No.
But we seem to have businesses thrive with governments and not the other way around. If no business should be able to stand up against a government. Clearly. So isn't that the situation when government comes and is even drawing the policy? It is because that particular business that is sponsoring that bill was a contributor to that government's success at the elections or even in a re-election bid. if we take US, he says he wants to make America great, and he's bringing in his businesses, and he's getting support from the business owners. Isn't that the situation such that now businesses pretend like they are on the business side when in fact they are on the government side? They are even part of the government. They are the finances of the government. So what are we talking about political relationship, policy, something, when it's all a ruse to get the minority?
Is it not also the case that for a government to survive, businesses must employ, especially when it comes to economic performance? Now, what use is a government if your economic indicators are all downward, unemployment downward, interest rate downward or upwards, if you put it, forex in a bad shape? What use is a government? And these don't forget, these indicators are not driven by government; they are driven purely by business.
So don't the businesses, aren't the businesses the other side of the government coin? The government is on the one side and the business is on the other side.
Yeah,
the business is just the economic projection of the government.
Yeah, I think that's why this. I've forgotten who was the last speaker talked about a relationship. It's a symbiotic relationship. Only that the point that I would agree with you is that I think that our business community hasn't actually shown a lot more mettle in their stance, or in their relationship with government. And so it looks as though government is always at the upper hand, of the relationship. But clearly, in a very democratic systems, in democratic systems, business as much as government has power. And I've actually, when we had the Brexit, all right, there was a clear message from the CEOs of Britain that they didn't want to exit. And they wrote to the government about their position and what they think that policy will lead to corporate Britain. And that their position was clear. The same got to do with the academic community. A lot of researchers wrote to government and told them about the status of research in UK and if they proceed on Brexit. Now, in our case, as Yakubu was saying, it looks as though business was even much more stronger in their position, circa 1990s, when he's talking about AGI, being at the forefront of the referendum than now. Because it looks like our businesses are chickening out now than it used to be. Because if you take, industrialists like Apiame, he's not a chicken feed. But of course, you would actually say that because he has a lineage, for example. But what about big corporate firms like Unilever's and all those people? I don't think that it is easy to say that, or it's a very simplistic relationship to say that perhaps business actually is the underdog, and government is the powerful. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. Yeah, Faisal.
Yes, sir. Yes, so I only wanted to cite an example of how government can actually create business for a particular company or industry. Now, just 3rd of July, which is a few days ago, the Chief of Staff has issued a government policy on the patronage of locally assembled vehicles. Now, the direction is that the President has directed all ministries, departments, and agencies, municipality, district assemblies to buy vehicles from locally assembled manufacturers. Now, the background to this is an example I cited 2 classes ago regarding the banning of salvage cars that are coming in and to give business to some huge auto manufacturers to establish their assembly plant here in Ghana. So recently, you may have seen on social media that Ghana has, the VW Ghana has produced 4 brand new cars in Ghana. So this policy clearly is going to be a huge business opportunity for other auto manufacturers to want to now come in, because government is really the biggest buyer. And if all government agencies are buying from locally manufactured companies, then clearly it will help us, it will help our industrialization effort.
Agreed.
So that's
agreed, but a lot of people from the left will have an issue with that position. And I clearly would have an issue with that position, because then you actually
me too.
Yeah, you're actually constraining choice. Okay, and one of the negative that could actually cite against that is that if that is the case, what are you doing to protect Kantanka, for example? Because you see, what marketing does is about consumer choice moving to the biggest brand. And here is the case, biggest brand will be VW. All right. Now, you couldn't actually say that without any protection, Kantanka can actually compete fairly with VW. So in essence, you're rather creating market for a foreign brand than for a local content that you would rather want to promote. And that's one of the issues that I could actually have with that particular policy. So you would ask yourself, in that policy, what is it that would actually also protect Kantanka? Is that a quota that perhaps the government agencies will be instructed to actually procure from Kantanka as they seek to, promote locally manufactured? Because locally manufactured cars does not necessarily mean Ghanaian-owned cars. All right. And then also the second point is about the banning of imported cars. Again, every left-leaning person would have an issue with that, because then you're talking about the layers of the economy. People who like teachers, like us, all right? Now, how do you expect someone of a wage of about, let's say, 1,500 to be able to be able to own a new car when you have actually bad importation of it? So I think that the policy itself perhaps must be looked into, because a lot of other sections of society could actually have an issue with that.
So is that not a clear case of the landlord-tenant issue I spoke about?
That is the issue.
It doesn't give a hoot up as to the left wing.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that sense. I agree with you in that direction. But what I'm saying is that we couldn't also completely negate the fact that there is also some kind of symbiotic relationship, but the idea that business have no say at all, I think that would not be the case, reflecting on
can I come back to it again?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, it's important that we also establish the policy rationale behind the banning of those salvage cars. Of course, cost is a big factor. And we have to look at the income levels of majority of our people. But also the other side of it is also to look at the cases where accident cars that are really damaged in other countries are being brought in. And that is also being one of the factors for which we are getting many accidents on our roads as far as the policy is concerned. That is one. Number two, the policy of buying locally assembled cars is not mainly for the VW per se. So Kantanka, like you mentioned, who has been assembling cars for all this while and has actually been calling for this policy. I guess this policy will go a long way to actually help.
It is not. It is not as simple as that. And that's what I was telling you, Pfizer. The market, when you allow the market to dictate, the market will actually move to the side of VW. Why? Because of the brand power. All right. The brand power of VW would definitely make sure that the market actually goes to VW, because Kantanka and VW are not the same when it comes to competition. All right. VW is more powerful. They have more money. They will probably have a lot more money to set up, garages to maintain, and it's a brand that is known. Kantanka, on the other hand, it's a feeble brand, a brand that is actually now growing. So if you do not actually have a provision in that policy in order to protect Kantanka to also grow, then of course you would actually, move the market in a way that would be to absolute advantage of VW. That's the point I'm making. Are you with me?
All right, sir. Say you are the boss.
Oh, no, I'm not the boss.
Like the government. The government is the boss.
No, I'm not the boss. I'm not the boss. It's a discussion that I'm shifting your attention. In order that you could actually see the power of the market and how the market could actually dictate, to the benefit of VW as opposed to Kantanka, if nothing is done to protect Kantanka. And that's the thing I was actually saying the other time, that
I support you 100% on that.
The idea that, after Nana, and this is also a point that we've made, that Bawumia can actually, take the position of Nana. It's simplistic, because if there's nothing to protect, Bawumia, for example, the constituencies, that will actually push certain candidate could win. And that's exactly the debate, that we're having with this, just like we had the other time. All right. So the idea that, I think, Remy, I think Abracadabra was going to speak.
Oh, okay. No problem.
So let him, and then you come in. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So I totally agree with you, and I want to debunk the argument that imported cars are actually the cause of accidents on the road. I beg to differ with my brother Faisal.
Yeah, I think there's not even data to support that debate.
Yes.
That's why I feel, sometimes our policies are weak because we do not have strong evidence. I mean, there's almost every evidence that there's recklessness on our road. All right. There's almost every evidence. Of course, anecdotally, we see how people drive. Now, just look at what happened yesterday. They said a guy won a lotto of 1,500 cities. He recklessly took a taxi and then just killed 5 people. I mean, instances like this. All right. So I think that there is enough evidence to suggest that perhaps our motor, institutions responsible for regulation of the, the roads and stuff, perhaps are not doing a lot more that they should do. Where is the data that actually suggests that accident as a result of imported cars? I mean, that debate is actually weak, Anyway, Romeo.
Sorry. On that, without the benefit of seeing the memo that was attached to what was sent to
Parliament. I agree.
Yes, I mean, it's there. It's on record now. So we're only expressing our personal opinion, but I'm talking about what.
No.
Yeah.
I just want to see something.
No, let's.
What we need to know is that in the business world, the president and his team has convinced these automobile people to come and set up plants here with the aim of creating jobs for Ghanaians.
Yeah.
At the same time, the automobile people also need to have market for their product.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, behind the scenes, the investors coming into the system will also be pushing the government to create an enabling environment for their product to be purchased.
No,
so that could also, that could also be a factor.
No doubt about that. But I'm saying that policy is a social good, right? You encourage social good. And so when a policy is being made, it has to take into consideration, or it has to take on board every part of the society. All right. So potentially, even if you look at people who can afford new cars, all right. I, for example, with my kind of wage, I can't afford new car.
You can't go.
That's the reality.
It's a reality, yeah. It's a reality.
I tell you how.
Doug, let me come in.
Yeah, Romeo, come in.
So my issue is this. I mean, I don't know whether it's a rhetoric or something. The private sector is the engine of growth. We need to empower our own people. First and foremost, we talk about job sustainability. So let's take, for instance, NAPCO. How sustainable can these jobs be if you don't empower your own people to, give the youth jobs that can sustain them for a long time? So this issue is all about, empowering your own people first. Because any country,
that's rhetorical. All right.
Yeah.
So it's not for us to answer that, right?
Okay.
No, the reason why I'm okay. Anyway.
Okay. You can go on.
Yeah. No, it's Sam. Sam, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Now, with the issue of empowering our own, coming to the technical capacity and ability and the human resource, if you take a place like China, China did something where they allowed a lot of foreign companies to come in solely to be able to learn from them and copy them and imitate them. So then they got to the point that now they can do all the same things. They can produce the cars, they can produce the equipment, the technology, all of that, and they can even do it better.
Yeah.
And so we are some distance from that, and we can't jump the steps.
No, of course not.
Let's say like you were talking about the free market. The reason why the free market will push for a VW brand over Kantanka, it's clear because it's an established brand, and when you see VW, you see quality over Kantanka and aeroplanes that can fly and all of that.
Yeah, Samuel, I don't disagree with you at all. I agree with you, but the point I was making is that there must be a provision.
Aeroplanes that can fly.
Yes, a provision to protect. You have to. So the government definitely has to.
There must be a provision that could actually
protect
and sustain. So in that provision, provision,
without that, it won't. It's not going to work. There has to be protection.
In that provision, you're looking at the possibility of VW somehow working with Kantanka. All right.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of alliance or some kind of relationship so that the China model that you talked about, all right, the copying and the learning, etc., can happen?
Yeah.
Because these are deliberate.
Every investor, so every investor that comes in, like at the GIPs, every investor that comes in, I mean, you definitely have to have a local partner, even in the cases where you can have 100% ownership. Our advice goes to you that you should have a local partner, and that local partner is not just to be there for decorative or underage purposes, but to participate and to learn. And there's technology transfer. So we have technology transfer agreements that we are negotiating every single day with all companies.
Okay, that's
because these things will allow for capacity building.
That's a good point.
So that we can now get to the place where we can do certain things on our own. So it's all in there.
That's a great point. All right, I mean.
Yes, Doc.
Yeah.
So I've just been listening to the different views about this topic. And I just remember one of the topics we discussed. I can't remember which course, but I think it's really important for us to see that government and business relationship is based on the kind of market that you are talking about. For instance, if you look at Ghana is more or less, when we're discussing international markets and all that, we understand certain countries are consumers, right? They consume products from other markets.
Yeah.
And then some countries are producers. So the relationship between business and government will depend on the type of market that you find. So an example is Ghanaians. The relationship the government of Ghana will have with businesses in Ghana will depend on the type of market that Ghana has. So, for instance, Chinese will have more influence in our market, and the policies that they will pass, whether in favor of local business or foreign businesses, will depend on that kind of market. So I don't know if we can consider that as we discuss this particular
you're right. Yeah. So countries that are net consumers or net producers, the relationship is different. So when you're a net consumer, obviously the relationship with business is supposed to be much more in the strength area of business. But you see, that kind of characteristics, you realize that we do not have actually giants like conglomerates, that could actually shift that power into the hands of business.
Just one group, Zoom Lion.
So I think that's the issue. We are not, although we are net consumers, in terms of business power, we don't have it because there's no conglomerate. I mean, heavy conglomerate. You can count the conglomerates in this country. All right, majority of it is agro processing and this informal sector. But in countries where they have conglomerate, they have giant corporations. that's where business tends to have a lot more power. And that's where, to some extent, I agree with Yaminsa about his theory of the landlord issue, because we still haven't actually developed, very heavy industrialists, who can actually, step in, maybe challenge government policies here and there. I mean, the issue of Zoomline, as somebody actually raised, I have argued that we probably have to create another 1 or 2 giants of Zoomlions, all right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you build capacity. But it looks like, when that conversation comes in, then there is a lot of, I don't know, debate about whether it's a witch hunting. But I think that there must be a deliberate effort to create, a giant, industrial giant, in the system. Okay, guys, can we move on, and then, let's look at the public government relationship, because we've talked a lot about the first one. Let's look at public government relations. It's not only voting and electing officials, special interest groups. It goes beyond that. What are some of the things we can think about? Remember, as you are discussing this, you're making your own notes, all right? Yeah. So, public government relationship. Yeah? I'm listening, guys. Any ideas?
So is it possible you could clarify?
For example.
If you could introduce it for us.
Okay, so we're looking at the relationship between, the public. What does the responsibilities that the public have over government, or exercise, over government, or government exercise over the public, and vice versa. For example, watchdog role. All right, there's currently we're talking about, everybody is analyzing the government policy, just like we are talking about now. All right, whether the policy is in the right direction for the benefit of the people, etc. So the public versus government relationship, goes beyond electing public officials, but it could also be like a watchdog, because the public is actually scrutinizing government moves, all right, and having a critical perspective and questioning, all right. So one example is like that, all right. Yakubu.
Doc.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to talk more on the special interest groups.
Yeah.
Okay. For some years now, we've seen civil society organizations.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen, what's the name? What's the name of this group?
Coalition.
No, Nana work. Nana question why your group. Let me know if I forget.
Occupy Ghana.
Is that
Occupy Ghana?
Occupy Ghana.
They occupy Ghana. Mm-hmm. They have been so much good to the public, in the sense that there are certain things that they do that majority of the public, to my understanding, they didn't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We take of the Auditor General.
Yeah.
All the years, Public Account Committee look at the report, they talk to people and other stuff. But we never knew that they have the strength to even bite. Mm-hmm. It has to take the group to come out and say, no, there's a law that the Auditor General can bite. Mm-hmm. And it is helping the public government relationship now.
Yeah.
That you can't just do anything and go free. Mm-hmm. So I think the group has done well, mm-hmm. and other civil society groups are also helping the public to have a good relationship, or make sure that the government cannot just take the people for granted.
Excellent. So you can actually capture it as an accountability, all right? Accountability role, and remember, when we say public, we don't necessarily mean just the ordinary people, but we're talking about individuals and institutions or groups that actually represent, or that are actually public in character. When we say public, that is non-governmental, or is not a government, role, or is not the business. But we're talking about civil society, etc., and ordinary people, all right? Okay, Ajara. So what Yakubu said is about, accountability, and obviously watchdog as well, isn't it? You demand accountability from government, etc. Okay, Ajara, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, I would also like to talk about the special interest group with relation to voting and electing of officials and all.
Yeah.
You realize that, especially when it comes to election year, the government is very, very mindful when they are coming out with policies, and they sort of need a blessing of certain special groups like the Ghana Medical Association, the Ghana National Association of Teachers, and there is this rising group in Ghana that have a very loud voice when it comes to what the government does of late. Is the Aboso kind spare part dealers.
Yeah, they've been very, very powerful now.
Exactly, with these spare part dealers. So you realize that most of the time the government is very mindful of getting such special groups in line with, like, to align with whatever policies that they are doing. To the extent that when the government when these people just go on strike, it even affects the government business. When they just strike, when Ghana Medical Association just call for a meeting right now, you realize that the government is in a hurry to start holding discussions with them.
Yeah.
So I think it's a relationship sort of. Thank you, sir.
That's correct. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. Abracadabra.
So I think there is also the point of business partnering between the government and then the private sector as well, because the government issued a policy where certain companies in Ghana, the government taxed them as agents to withhold the 7% deduction and direct it directly to the government. So I think there is a bit more of business partnering, because even in the council now, where some of the CEOs and some of the big guys are sitting on the board, the economic board and all that. So there's a bit of business partnering there.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Good point. Now, could you say that the public-government relationship, there's a supervisory role? Do you have a feeling that public actually supervises government? Or it comes under the watchdog and accountability? All right. Anyway. Okay, so let's look at go on. Abracadabra, you want to say something? Oh, your hand is up.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't put my hand down.
Okay. All right.
Watchdog and accountability.
Yeah, watchdog and accountability.
The false on it. The supervisory should fall into that.
Okay, excellent. Now, the government, you talk about politicking and public policy formulation. Obviously, the relationship is vice versa, isn't it? Because government also seek accountability from people, isn't it? Like obeying the protocols, for example. All the policies that the people are supposed to actually obey from the government position. So that's that. And then business-public relationship, the public and the business relationship, also falls within the same framework. Obviously, accountability, because when public advertises, all right, and then a business advertises, for example, business is supposed to put out information, etc. There is a public scrutiny. So if there's a misinformation, etc., the public could actually point out. All right. So I think that you could use, and again, the watchdog. All right. So you could use these relationships to describe, all these, kind of relationships path that we have actually, ascribed here. All right. Any question or contribution? Any question before we move on to the next slide? Okay. So when we're looking at the non-regulatory influences of business, of government on business, there are two frames, all right? And, one of them is the industrial policy or privatization and privatization. And if you look at the industrial policy, from Nkrumah's time, almost every government, has had an industrial policy or the other, right? Nkrumah's 7-year plan, industrialization is one. Obviously, PNDC, there was, some kind of a small-scale industrialization, project that were ongoing. And as a result, they created, some institutions. I think Empretech was created under PNDC, right? Was Empretech under PNDC or MBSSI, Empretech, and those institutions? I can't remember. but of course, there were certain efforts to promote small scale businesses in the country. Now, if you look at the what we call the Kufuor era, the creation of the PSI, for example, all right, the private state presidential state. What was it?
Presidential Special Initiative.
Presidential initiative. Exactly. It was an industrialization policy, all right, and then of course the one village, one was it one district, one
factory.
One factory, one district, one factory is an industrialization policy. So almost every government comes up with the industrialization policy of a kind, and then of course privatization. Again, that's a non-regulatory influence where government decide to privatize certain state-owned institutions. But there had been times where government has also nationalized. Don't forget, certain private institutions like Siao and Co, whose businesses were nationalized in those years, PNDC eras, right? So these two, that is industrialization and privatization, are non-regulatory influences that government exercise on business. But don't forget, there is also the emergence of the third way, which we call the PPP. Remember, the public-private partnership is a newcomer, all right, when it comes to non-regulatory influence on business, where government now is partnering private businesses in order to actually create certain commercial entities that otherwise what do you call private people couldn't actually create, all right, and with state power they're able to create that existence and then share profits or share revenue to the betterment of the society. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc, for the opportunity. This is a question that I want the class to help me with.
Yeah.
I was having a discussion with someone as to, let me be blunt, as to the chances of ex-President John Mahama. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, why is it that all the other candidates failed abysmally? And then he told me something. He said, every president who comes builds businesses. The government we have in Ghana, they are the business enablers. They are the ones who establish businesses through non-regulatory influence. Mm-hmm. So if Mahama decides that he's not going to go on the ticket of the NDC again, that is his own decision, and that would help the party, because then he can tell the businessmen that he has built to support such a candidate. But if Mahama decides to go and he loses, all those financiers of the party will go away. I want to ask you, isn't the government in our part of the world responsible for establishing businesses through this PPP or PSI or one district, one factory? Isn't it the government's way of establishing businesses in the country? Because left alone, there is no way a Ghanaian can be able to establish a business.
Okay, it's good that he didn't throw at me. He's throwing to the class.
The Ghanaian can establish a business, but
so
not
class,
a conglomerate.
Yes,
not of conglomerate. That's, I mean, not the size we are looking
Wait,
for.
Let's hear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mentor, I hope it is plain for everyone to see that a government helped a company like Zoom Lion to become a big company.
Very, very plain.
Sure.
Good. But it does not stop there. The government is no more in power, but the business is in power. But based on the interest of the subsequent government coming, Zoom Lion can decide to help any party once they continue to help the businesses to flourish. Mm-hmm. And so automatically, the political something, you need to bring something.
Something for something.
Something for something.
Okay. All right. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Now, before, is your hand still up?
No, Doc. I'm waiting for answers. I have Yakubu, so if anymore.
Before Faisal come in.
Hello.
Before Faisal come in, let me give one example. And usually I'm a little bit familiar with the British system because I've been there for quite some time now. I remember in was it between 2005 and 2006, all right, when Richard Branson started his media, Virgin Media. At the time, the company I think was home-based. He bought it. They were into telecommunications, internet and things. I remember very well that the New Labour brought a policy where they were looking to expand internet connectivity to the villages, all right? So the proposal was that whichever telecom company would actually take the challenge to lay fiber optics, to lay the cables from the villages to the cities, would have certain incentives. Obviously, Richard Branson then took the advantage, took the opportunity, and actually went beyond. In fact, BT also contested. But I think they went beyond providing internet connectivity by providing fiber optics, which was much more compelling than the other technology. Now, what happened? It brought Virgin Media to stay, which means the New Labour through, and the money wasn't actually Virgin's money, it was state money, all right? It was some kind of state support to a private firm, and that goes to affirm your PPP agreement, all right? Your PPP point. So Virgin moved in to create those fiber optics from the villages to the city centers, in order that the entire Britain can be connected, to the highway, the internet highway. Now, similar thing happened in 2008 when the credit crunch happened. There was a run on Northern Rock, and those of you who are familiar with the environment, you know what I'm talking about. There was a serious run on Northern Rock. Again, at that time, I think it was Gordon Brown. He gave Northern Rock to Richard Branson, and there was a huge public outcry because the state was actually funding that process, although the company was going to be Virgin money. Why did the state do that? Because they needed to ensure that certain jobs were protected and people had confidence in the economy. So they created Virgin money. Richard Branson created Virgin money with government shares in it, but it's a private business. So at some point in time, all right, government actually supports industrialization through that particular PPP means. But the issue is that in our case, when government tries to do that, there's a public outcry. Why is that? Because, of course, in Britain, there was also public outcry. But it looks like in our case, transparency becomes an issue, all right? People do not know the owners of the business, whether it's truly government or it's quasi-government, or it's people behind government, but owning it as a private entity. These are some of the issues that we probably have to question, all right? All right, Faisal.
Yes, sir. I think you have even addressed one of the key points that I actually wanted. Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. I'm saying that I think you've addressed one of the key points that I actually wanted to say, which had to do with the transparency bit.
Yeah.
But to address your question more specifically, starting from the top, y'all seem to be hearing quite a lot of gossips regarding what goes on in government.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy, hey.
I mean, these are all gossip that we cannot subscribe.
Faisal, I am losing you. You're losing you. Can you come again?
Yeah, is the most wonderful cosmate we have ever found.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, let's focus. Yeah, Faisal, we are losing you. Yeah.
Can I keep you something?
No, we didn't hear Faisal. Faisal.
Yeah, Doc.
Okay, we've lost Faisal. Oh, yeah,
Doc,
yeah.
the PPP thing that your mentor is talking of, when we campaign on the one district, one factory.
Yeah.
In the minds of people, they were thinking government is coming to set up the factories.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a public government private partnership.
Yeah. You see the way you are struggling.
I'm not struggling.
Yeah.
It is government private partnership.
Yeah.
That will enable the environment for these private people to confidently invest their money into the factories.
Yeah.
But
was
did not get the message right.
But was the communication clear?
Oh, you know, sometimes when you need vote.
Yakubu, say it like it is. Say it like it is. Yakubu.
All politicians are liars.
No, he's not saying all politicians are liars.
Please, no, that's not.
That's not what he's saying. But there's strategic communication.
What I'm saying is that this is a classroom.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We are educating ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
We should know the language of the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes people talk, or American people call it double talk. They say something, they mean something different.
Okay,
Honorable
Yakubu, can that have something to do with ethical issues?
That one is confusion all the way.
Okay, guys, let's be careful that we don't hijack the class for other people. I hope the rest of the class is following, and they're following the conversation. Yeah, if they're not following the conversation,
once we are learning, once we are learning about ethics, I think that Yakubu should be schooled to go and school his people to be very ethical when they are packaging their campaign message, because we have gone beyond lies.
All right, okay. That I cannot comment on.
Nobody's lying.
That package was made to the government was going to build factories to create jobs. Only to realize that when they got power, then now they were telling them we are bringing strategic investors to come and.
Last Rossman.
Okay, so David, that was a rhetorical feedback, right? It's not for me to answer that. Abracadabra, let's listen to you.
No, I just wanted to say we are following. It's good. These are coming up, these discussions and these arguments. It's all for the better.
Yeah.
And as Yakubu has said, it is just for the class. Yeah. But we know what will happen. So, Yakubu, you can just limit it to the class. Don't worry, inshallah, we'll win. Don't worry.
Okay, good. All right, guys, let's move on to industrial policy. Faisal, when you come back, because we didn't hear you what you said. Okay, so as the definition goes, industrial policy is every form of state intervention that affects industry as a distinct part of the economy, which we have explained earlier. So trend towards stronger industrial policy, current industry policy supports new winning industries and fosters growth. I think that there was, in fact, after the credit crunch, all right, most countries actually set themselves up on industrial policy perspective. Only that some became very protectionist, all right? There was a cry of protectionism, and I think that is why Kofi Annan granted that interview. I don't know how many of you have been exposed to that interview, where he criticized the West for only sharing the goodies in globalization. And he sounded a caution that if the goodies of the globalization is not shared equally, it could actually bring about instability and the kind of things that we're actually witnessing now. All right. And so when the industrialization policy actually set, we have to be mindful of two things. That it actually favors the people that the policy that is the indigents of the country, and that also it actually conforms to the norms of the global village, i.e., it is not protectionist. All right. So in as much as I actually would commend the government policy on this, industrialization, bringing in these automakers, etc. Of course, that actually moves us beyond the path of protectionism. But protecting your local industries themselves are not bad thing to do. All right, they are actually within the space of industrialization and the space of the global competition. So, you do not want to be sounding, protectionist, as America was accused of in 2008, when they were actually saying that, they have to bring our American factories, back to England and back to US. And then I think Gordon Brown was also accused for protectionist when he said that British jobs for British people, and he had a lot of, flack. All right, we will have to be in a balanced position when we're actually looking at the industrialization policy to influence, what you call growth. We have to be in a balance, and I think that would be the best way to go. All right, how to be in the balance could be a question of judgment and people's evaluation, but we have to try as much as possible to be there. So when you are by the policy, desk or policy roundtable discussing, as an advocacy student, I would expect that you would chip in those aspects. The protection of local industries is key. China did it, Korea had done it. But of course, also allowing global players to come in for technology transfer is also key. So we have to marry the two to ensure that we benefit from both sides. Obviously, the idea of privatization, as we have said, that it's one of the non-regulatory, is also very important. But we must also be mindful about privatization, because the idea that when the private man get money, it trickles down to the ordinary people is not true. All right, there's no evidence, because we have seen private people who have made huge sums of money, and what they do is they just enjoy the money alone. So when you go to the left of center, policy thinkers and academics, they would actually argue against any idea of, incentives like tax rebates for corporate, industrialists, etc. Because there's a feeling that if government does not deliberately, let the private person take that initiative, the money will not go down. All right. And for me, I think it is clear, the way people, swim in riches and the way people show opulence. It can tell you that private people, when not managed or when not guided, they would not let the money trickle down. And when you follow the debate, sadly in our system, we don't debate so much on ideology, and sometimes I bemoan that, because I think it's a fantastic thing for us to do, all right, especially towards election times. We do not hear a space. There's no space for ideological debate. And that is sad. And that's what is actually affecting the quality of our leadership, all right? By now, in American elections, in British elections, for example, you hear a clear line between the two sides, all right? And majority of people from the left leaning would argue that when you give those incentives, believing that the private person would employ extra people in order that they could use that incentives given by government to pay them, they wouldn't do it. They would add it to their profitability, and they would jet off for holidays. Some in our local parlance will marry 2, 3 because they want more money. So
that's right. And then they will have side chicks waiting.
Dog.
Yes.
Sometimes we call it balanced diet.
And they will have a side chicks along the line, in addition to the 3-4 wives. And then if they are women, they will actually build properties, huge properties. They will fly to Dubai to make shopping. They will go to London, etc. So for me, I think that to have a balance is always the key. Right? In as much as you're giving the private people or you're encouraging privatization, you must also have the people in mind in order that you can carry the people along. So how does the private person make those profits actually trickle down onto the ordinary person who is a laborer in the workplace? Government must institutionalize them. Government must actually what we call sanction that, right? If we don't do that, the money will not go down. I don't know whether my debate is tenable. So let me invite.
Sir, I disagree with you completely.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, you see, sir, the level of development that we have in our part of the world, if you tell politicians to go and sit and have ideological debates, sir, I think as far as the ordinary man is concerned, it's almost a complete waste of time.
Okay.
The truth is that, the truth is this. Now, ideological debates are good for, let me say, a certain kind of people, academics, those who have read, liberal Democrats, this, that. But the ordinary man on the street doesn't have lights, he wants lights. He doesn't have job, he wants job. All this can trickle down as far as the ideological debates are concerned, or the ideology of each party is concerned. But to him, whether NDC or MPP, whichever gives him free senior high school, he does all he cares.
Okay.
Whether MPP is supposed to be center right, so they should not be those giving you free senior high school. They should be ensuring people are patronizing private sector-led secondary education. The Ghanaian doesn't really care.
So, Faisal, let me ask you one question, and I think that's the caveat that always come in when we talk about ideological discussions or debate. Faisal, let me ask you one question. So, if somebody asks you whether you support corporal punishment or not, would you have, okay, let me not even use you because you are a highly learned person. If you go to the Mokola, all right, or you go to those places, excuse me to say, people who are perhaps far from education, all right, if you ask them a question whether they agree with corporal punishment or not, would they be able to tell you? And corporal punishment, not in the language that I'm using, but in the expression that they understand, that whether they agree that when the child does something wrong at school, they have to be caned or not. Do you think they have the mental capacity to answer you?
Yes, sir.
They have, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So if they have that mental capacity to answer you whether they support or not, then why are you arguing that ideological discussion is only for top level? You see, the caveat is that we do not understand how debates are done, all right? And we think that when we talk about ideological debates, about explaining what is left, explaining what is right. No. When you said that you want to produce or you want to provide free education or you want to provide a particular kind of service, how are you seeking to do it? That's what we call ideological debate. So you're actually explaining to the ordinary Ghanaian your method or your way of providing. Do you think the ordinary people will not understand it?
They will understand.
I think that we become we are somehow we don't consider them that they have the ability to actually make judgments.
So we think we can think for them.
On their and that's why I think we are making a mistake. When we talk about ideological debate, we don't talk about the abstractions, but we're talking about how is that applied to the service that you're actually saying you want to provide. Maybe come in before you comes in. Maybe you have a reaction.
Yeah, you see, sir, what I'm saying is this. From what you said, I'm looking at the ideology of the parties, okay, which you are saying that we should have those kinds of debates. When it comes to the free senior high school, the MPP have actually trumpeted this from 2008. And how we've been explaining over and over, and I believe the 2016 election actually attests to the fact that the Ghanaian people actually bought how we were going to implement it. Of course, when we came into government during the implementation, we found difficulties and we've also provided solutions as to the way forward. So as far as that matter is concerned, for me, it is that every political party must have a debate as to how it intends to implement its policies and programs and promises.
But do they do?
But I'm saying that as far as
they don't.
Sorry.
In large part, they don't. They give us the headlines of what they will do, and the conversation as to how they will achieve it. They will tell you, "Oh, that one will come into power." Isn't it?
Even Doc.
Then in
2012, Nanado was on Hard Talk in BBC. Hello?
Yeah,
Nanado was on Hard Talk BBC, and he was asked the same question: how was he going to do it? And he goofed.
So no, sorry, but then he didn't follow. He was asked about the money, where you get the money, not how you do it, please.
How did he go? Calculated how
No. Say.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, it's fine.
Faisal, maybe you can come back with your reaction, but let's listen.
Listen. You know, important. You don't have to answer every question.
Yakubu, wait.
Yakubu is my turn.
You don't answer every question.
Yakubu, you don't have the floor, please.
Okay.
You don't have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to pass this comment. The level of leadership that is going to be provided in any democratic institution is solely dependent. It's not solely, but there's a heavy dependence on the level of intellectual opposition that the party in power gets.
True.
It's as simple as that. And I think that is what probably you are alluding to, that the government is not taking certain initiatives to be able to curb private businesses from being ostentatious.
Yeah.
It is also because we Ghanaians, per culture has been running through almost all the courses we are doing. Where in our culture, it is only the king who is supposed to drive the Rolls Royce and the rest of us will walk.
Yeah.
So every private man who gets $100 million from the government to build businesses and pay people would go for balanced diet.
And they
because
think
that
that
is
the
how
money belongs to them.
But imagine if this whole class that we are, I haven't heard anybody who went to stand for a parliamentary candidacy. The elitists in the society have also joined the bandwagon, and they're just caring about themselves, but with nobody really caring about providing the level of opposition that will keep the government on its toes. That is why there's a debate about finding a vice presidential candidate who has the metal, in quotes, like Baumia. But that is not the issue. The issue has to be the level of opposition and critique that we give to the people in power. And therefore, the people in power have also realized that if you remember, I asked you about institutions being rid of teeth. When Obama came, I think I mentioned that. The politicians are deliberately doing that so that they will continue remaining relevant. Because if the guy who is just a teacher is the member of parliament for my area, and me, I hold a master's degree, and that guy is making decisions for me, how do you expect us to keep the government on its toes? It's simple as that, Faisal. Please.
Next time,
Faisal, you had a reaction, but I could tell you.
Yes, I do. But you see, of course, we are in the lecture hall, so sometimes I'm able to flow the way I would have wished to.
Yeah.
Because
Faisal, we've lost you.
We've lost him again.
I have to record. I hope it's fine.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes, so I'm saying that. Say, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm saying that I recognize that we are in a class, so I try not to bore people so much with my thoughts. So if I may want to stand down on that.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. All right, so we have perspectives, when it comes to those debates. But the caution that I only put across is that, public policy must benefit everybody. So where we do not have certain constraints to make people act the way we want them to act, and then we put responsibility solely in their judgment, we could have it wrong, So sometimes we have to put those constraints in order that can actually force people to make sure that the benefits actually descend on everybody else. All right. Okay. So obviously, when it comes to government, we say that either government provides services or produces services. And when we say government provides services, we don't mean that government itself is producing. It could actually use, certain, third parties to provide a service and they pay for it. Right? And that's why I even thought about, I was questioning whether even the free SHS buildings, for example, couldn't even be operated on, a build, operate, and transfer perspective. Because if the country actually needs, infrastructure to get its students going or to actually enhance, academics, government doesn't actually have to do everything. I mean, we could do BOT as a PPP arrangement, that institutions, like SNIT, for example, can build schools, isn't it? Certain private people can own, can build schools, get those schools running, government, through its, process, pay them small. At the end of the day, they paid off and they are transferred to what do you call, what do you call the appropriate, institution, GS, for example. So for us to actually run, for example, and that's an example, I'm not critiquing it. For us to actually run double track because we say we don't have infrastructure, how long would it take government to actually build infrastructure? Can we actually look at other perspectives? Can we actually look at other perspectives? For example, get private people to build the infrastructure. Government paid gradually, and then over some time, it's transferred back to government. When these are sort of the debates that I'm talking about, Faisal, the ideological debate. Where we can actually
it really does make sense. It really does.
Private participation in government provisioning of services. Government cannot produce every time. Yeah, Samuel, you wanted to say something?
No, actually, I'm saying that, yeah, there are steps being taken to address the challenges in terms of the lack of infrastructure and all of that. But the points that you raise, they are very, very apt because they are being employed in other areas. Like you look at railway, you look at bridges, roads, you look at all these things. Government does the BOTs in these places. I think this is a place where, like you said, considering a BOT in terms of school buildings and the infrastructure is also a very, 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 very laudable thing. But I don't know how far that has been taken into consideration. But maybe we can, as a business advocacy group, we can start championing that.
Exactly. I mean, I remember there was a time during Labour's time, they moved into this private ownership of schools, all right? Including PTAs, parent-teacher associations, owning schools. So there were schools that belonged to the PTAs because the parents actually came together to actually put up. There were schools that actually belonged to certain companies, all right? And these arrangements were made to broaden access, cycle 1997, when Labour Party won power with their education policy. I mean, these are some of the conversations we can have. But you hardly
But
hear.
maybe this will affect the political communication. Because we said we'll do it. So we have to do it. This day will cost you, will pull you to come and do it. We said we will do it.
Yeah. And you see, and one example of saying about, I think that when the finance minister actually queried why we all have to pay, and I supported him. And I was actually on that grounds because I feel that, look, if we tarry, all right, our development will be too late because we don't have time. Look, I agree that you could actually implement free SHS as a wholesale, but in the period, you can have a moratorium, isn't it? A wholesale free SHS of moratorium of, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, within which you are actually developing capacity for database, all right? So that you could at some point have all those who can pay, actually fished out by the system and say, you can pay, you have to pay school fees. You can pay, you have to pay school fees. You cannot pay, you have to go free. So you can actually have a free SHS moratorium period of, let's say, 10 years, free. After the 10 years, there could be, and the point is that sometimes you will say political expediency, but you see, it is about development of the country we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Doc. One will argue that if you see yourself as the government that can actually take the country where it has to be, then you have to do you have to stay in power.
I agree.
If you relinquish that power, then the journey will be truncated.
Yeah.
So what would it take to stay in power? First, so then the thing becomes, first of all, get the power and stay in power so that you can implement. Now, right now, we know that the Akufo-Addo graduates, they are going to be over 1 million. That alone is like the household of votes. So then the issue of power comes in. If you're talking about having a 10-year period, that is going to spread out. Maybe we'll lose the next election. But this one, over 1 million votes, steady, it's constant. You get me?
Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you
I'm
sure?
saying that's the idea. That's the thinking.
Are you sure?
That's the idea.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah. Have you seen, if I may just chip in, there's this commercial, there's this little clip that they did of a man coming home, he's wearing his NDC colors and everything. And he walks into the hall and then his wife is wearing MPP stuff and she's dancing and she's singing another song. And the husband catches her and she starts taking everything off. And then she leaves the scarf. And the husband says, and what about the scarf? Don't worry, you forgot to take it off. Then she said, it's not you. This free SHS thing, it has benefited us. So what can I do? And then the husband's like, it's true. You said something. In fact, let's all dance. And then the husband took off his NDC stuff and started dancing. So it's just.
Therefore, hands down, NDC no more.
Yakubu, be very careful. But sir, can I add something small?
Yeah, Faisal.
Yeah, when the free senior high school matter came up again for discussion, the finance minister opined his opinion that he thought those who could afford it should go ahead and afford to pay, or they should not be made to pay. They should be made to pay rather.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was an account that was created from 2017 to date. Say, you'll be surprised to know that not a single parent has gone to pay. Not a single parent has gone to pay into that account as part of their
fee. Why? You think we wash our face?
No, because there hasn't been. You see, there hasn't been Pfizer. There hasn't been the campaign. The understanding of everybody.
There was.
No, there hasn't been a campaign. I mean, if you talk about,
I was involved.
No. If you talk about campaign, if you compare the campaign for free SHS for everybody, and campaign for free SHS of some people, and some people should go and pay. I mean, it's new for me. Even I'm the one, I always monitor the media. What you're telling me, it's completely new to me. Yeah. So I don't think it's completely new to me. Who has heard that?
No, I've not heard that. I've not heard that.
Who's ever heard that there's an account for people who can pay to go and pay?
Well, we've heard it. They created it when they started FPA.
Oh, really? Okay. So, but my point is that there must be a rallying call. All right. Sometimes leadership must call on the people that this is your response. Even we do that in our traditional homes, don't we? Those of us who have broad shoulders, don't we sponsor our relatives and our nieces, nephews, and things? Don't we? We do that. So in society, those who have broader shoulders carry along the others. So there can be a rallying call to tell people that, look, the country is not in a good shape to provide all these resources. So we cannot spread across everybody free. Those who really have the ability to pay should own up. And I'm telling you, if that campaign is done in a way that
the communication that you're told right now, if you see saying that the country is not in the right position to handle this, that defeats the whole purpose. Because we can do it.
So
it would rather be if you want to do it. If you want to do
Sam,
yes.
The point Sam, we're not talking about we cannot do.
No, that's not right now today.
Yeah. We're not talking about we cannot.
So I will find out either.
But we are talking about has the country got the resources across all sectors? We're saying that.
And that's why it's not really difficult to find out.
Enough resources.
Gideon, Mike, your mic.
Yeah. So we're talking about, can we actually free some spaces in order that we can invest in other places? Of course. So if people can pay, all right, and then you could realize some amount of money from there, and then to invest it in health, isn't it? Isn't it part of the development? So we're not saying that we cannot do free SHS. I'm saying that the country's footing is not sound. So we must make some savings somewhere in order to invest it somewhere. We must make some. Do you get it? So you could actually have a rallying call for people to say, look here, we need your support in order that we can enhance other places. Because
Doc, I actually support you 100%.
That's the point.
And the thing you're saying about not actually finding this out now, it's true, because the campaign for it could have been done better.
Yeah.
It could have been done way better. The education, the sensitization on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Fellow Ghanaians, I implore you that you should pay for your war school fees. That is the rallying call we didn't hear.
Yeah.
Why do you want to hear that, Yao?
Okay. So and I
think we said we'll do it.
Yeah,
so
and I said that all this conversation is channeled towards when we find ourselves on the decision table. Don't forget, we must have these perspectives, all right? If we want to actually grow this country, we must have a very detailed, diverse perspectives that can carry along everybody, all right? That's the proposition.
Yes, sir. You're right, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that, in fact, what is left is all we have discussed them all in the conversation. Let me just move to reasons for regulation. All right. So obviously, reasons for regulation: one, controlling natural monopolies. All right, where natural monopolies is such that there are certain industries that clearly there's a monopoly. I mean, since we have been independent, ECG, right? Electricity Corporation has been monopoly, is monopolized the market for all this while. Now,
PDS.
when we, in fact, I was one of the fierce, supporters of, privatizing ECG until the PDS came that wasn't transparent, and that's where I had an issue. All right, I remember that I was on Radio XYZ with Gary Nemako, and I debated fiercely that you couldn't have an institution where the same institution is the one who actually collects money and at the same time put on the light. Do you get it? I mean, if the person goes to the customer and then the customer finds them something to put in their pocket without paying the realistic bill, the guy goes back and put on the light for the person. How would you realize your money? So I was deeply in favor of splitting ECG to have one arm of it being the producer of power and to have a separate company responsible for the collection. All right. Now, when the time came and then the split came, there was the problem of the implementation. Once again, Ghana, when it comes to some of these things. And I was quite disappointed that the process wasn't done in a way that everybody could see the transparency involved in it. And everybody could actually support. And I'm telling you, at that time, when we're debating these issues, there was a huge support for ECG privatization. And I think it was in the time of, Mahama. And I had been on show with even Kofi Kapito, where some of these things we had actually discussed. So there was a huge support because ECG, to be frank, was not or hadn't been, efficient. Those of you who work there, I'm sorry to use that word, right? But clearly they hadn't been efficient, And so there had to be a solution to that. But as to how that solution came, I think that was the issue, So yeah, so controlling monopolies are reasons, one of the reasons for, regulation. Controlling negative externalities, where externalities, as I said, where there could be price hikes, sometimes. If you look at the banking sector, for example, if the banking sector is not regulated or the financial sector is not regulated, the externalities, even when they are regulated, look at the externalities, savings and loans going into, a behavior of universal banks when you are not a universal bank, people taking people's money and behaving as though the money is theirs, going back to UK to buy properties when you're not supposed to do that. All right. One of the companies that I didn't know. In fact, one of my students actually came to tell me that, oh, look, you can have mortgage. And I was new in the country, so I was like trying to look for places. I gave him money. I think I gave him 15,000. I said that I'm going to UK. I'll come back. I'll give him another. Before I came back, they say the company is collapsed. Why? Oh. They say the partners, one has taken the money to go and buy properties. Can you imagine? and one too has going to create another business so that the other partner doesn't know, and a whole lot.
This can only happen in Ghana. It's only Ghana that can.
You see, and that's the externalities that we're talking about. So if there are no regulations, there could be negative externalities that we can't control. Obviously, achieving social goods, social goals, and this is a very crucial point. There are certain industries or certain, organizations that are meant for social goals. And I remember I had a conversation with Nick Clegg on Star FM some time ago when they tried to lambast the University of Ghana, saying that Ashese is doing well, Ashese does that, Ashese that. I said, look here, University of Ghana has a mandate to train Ghanaians, regardless of who you are, all right? You cannot achieve the same class size as Ashese has. Ashese has the luxury to say, I want to have only 10 people in class. all right? As the University of Ghana, you have a mandate to train people. You cannot actually say, we want to achieve 10 people in class. Whose daughter or son are you going to admit and whose daughter or son are you going to drop when all of them have the same grades? So for public institutions like ours, you are mandated to take a certain number of people to the extent that the authorities will know that at this level you cannot move anymore. Before you can say you can't take more. Otherwise, you couldn't say we only need 100 people when clearly there's a capacity to take more, or there is an avenue to manipulate to take more. Do you get it? So there are certain institutions whose mandate are to ensure the spread of the public good, all right? And so you couldn't have the luxury to actually curtail that, The debate about whether if somebody has money or not, they should actually consume electricity. It's one of those things. Would you actually say that because the person is poor, they do not have the right to state interventions? No. You see. So, and these arguments would come in from ideological perspectives, and we have to debate it. Must people at a very low level of the economic ladder, which we call the bottom of the pyramid, must they have the right to certain state institutions or certain state, goods? Of course, yes. And at what point must that right, be curtailed? Should they be forced to perhaps take certain measures and say, okay, you have the potential to actually work and to be in work, and within this period, if you don't actually move up, we'll curtail that particular, access. Some of these conversations, we don't have that in this country. So the poor person has no voice, has no ability to buy, and has no aspirations or has no, goals, because we're not having a conversation that can actually affect them. And that's the point that sometimes some of us make, all right? The idea of achieving social goals is only centered at the level of those who already have. What about the have-nots? So I, for example, was arguing that, you see, if you look at the factors that actually govern our promotion, all right, it is unfair to a lot of women. I mean, not a lot, but to women, all right? We're supposed to publish a certain number of papers in a year, all right? Now, if you take a woman and the woman actually conceive in that particular period, clearly he's not going to be promoted because he's not going to have the capacity to sit down and to write papers to publish. So for me, I always say that why do we have the same measures for promotion for women and men at the same time when we know that biologically we are different people?
Equality. They want equality, so Charlie, the same standard for everybody.
But it not going to be like that.
No, but it's unfair.
We have to be honest.
Then they didn't fight for equality.
No, but
equality,
we
yes,
are
but
misunderstanding.
equality is totally different.
Yeah, we are misunderstanding the whole equality thing. You go to the classroom and a bunch of men are teaching. There are no women in the classrooms, very few women. How do our young ladies get inspired? It's a question we have to address. That means that there must be a lot of scholarship for women. There must be a lot of incentives for women to push up, but we don't discuss these things. And that's the kind of ideological debate I'm talking about.
You're talking about, yeah, sure.
Then say you are advancing what I call equitable values, not equality.
No, I'm not talking about equality. I'm talking about the ideological debate that I was actually telling you.
Right.
So these things, we have to have that conversation, all right? If we do not, because for me, I think it saddens me that there are some people in society who have no voice, who have no opportunities, and as a result, they have no aspirations.
That's why they need the MPs to represent them in parliament.
But then, are they doing it? Linda, you want to say something?
No, I wanted to say something about the women's stuff, but sorry.
Yeah, we're not getting you. Linda.
I wanted to pass a comment with regards to women, equality and equity, but it's all right.
Oh, you don't want to pass again?
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I think it's going to be
women
a
equality. Please go ahead.
Linda, go ahead.
I'd rather not.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, Linda, go ahead.
Class rep, go ahead.
Doc, it's going to be an endless argument.
We're not getting you. I think your line.
And so I'm sorry, it's all right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the ladies? Do you want to pass a comment? Yeah.
So sir, isn't the issue about culture? Isn't it culture that is causing all these problems?
Yeah, but we're supposed to be in control of our destiny, isn't it? We tend to say culture as if culture is some kind of independent entity that we cannot influence. Are you with me? I mean, they are within our domain of influence. If we think that is a culture, what do we do about that culture? We have to influence that culture. All right. And in most cases, culture is actually influenced or impacted upon with policies, isn't it? When we said that we want to eradicate female mutilation or whatever they call it, all right, didn't we actually make some headway? When we said that we wanted to curtail, marriage for young people, all right, beyond below certain ages, didn't we have the ability to actually curtail that? We did. So for me, the debates or the discussions sometimes we pose, oh, it's culture, as if culture lives on Mars and we live somewhere else. I think we should be mindful that culture can be changed, it can be influenced, all right, and then put in deliberate effort to actually change it. Yeah, I hope you are
dynamic.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where I want to get to, where we can influence it at the cultural base for all these things to happen. Mm-hmm. Because if we are able to really critique it at the cultural level, mm-hmm. then society in Ghana has a future. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it is not going to happen. We can do all the things at the top, but then the root is rotten.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
And it doesn't in any way put away the good aspects of our culture. No.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the aspects of our culture that has fed into this winner takes all in our political landscape.
Okay. All right. Good point. Okay. So types of regulation, obviously we have regulations that are economic, and those economic regulations, as you know, we're looking at, interest rate issues. We're looking at, sometimes, the what do you call it? The issue about, people's ability to actually buy, etc. So any regulation that actually borders on, economic, issues we're talking about. Obviously, we have social regulations, issue about the environment, and even the kind of thing that we just discussed, issue about, culture and certain practices that we have actually influenced, it's part of the social regulations. Any questions or contribution? I think we're done. All right. Questions or contributions? Okay. All right. Don't forget to do the ratings or the survey. One thing that you must know that I developed that survey in terms of the system, the engine. It's one of my innovative, thinkings. So I try to, find a way of improving on, our monitoring system. So as you rate, the university or the dean can see, live the performance of the entire, school, and then individually, you can see the dashboard showing individual performances. And we're going to implement it if the university accepts, or if the business school accepts, for the regular school as well. So you don't have to wait until the end of semester before you rate or you actually evaluate a lecturer. After every lecture, you can go to what we call the digital booth, and then you can rate the lecturer, and then the lecture at a time, so that we can continually assess staff performance as opposed to waiting for end of semester. So this is a trial that we're using. And if it works, perhaps they can actually...
Well noted.
Linda, say it again.
Please, when are you bringing Ajoba?
Ajoba was going to Nzima this weekend, so next week she will be coming.
Okay.
Yeah, so next week we're going to have Ajoba in class.
Hey, sir, please, we beg you.
Yeah.
We haven't ideologically criticized who Ajoba is. So,
yes, so we don't know
what coup d'etat is that?
Okay. Ajoba was a corporate director, corporate affairs for ABL. All right.
Okay.
That is AB InBev. Now, but she's moved on to what do you call a British Council now. I think she's moved on to British. So she's going to take us through how corporate lobby, all right, how businesses lobby as a sector and as individual.
Wonderful.
She's handled that. So in fact, she was the president of the beverages, whatever they call them.
Okay.
Yeah. So she has a lot of experience, and she's.
Thank you for the insight.
Excellent. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc.
Yet another
Doc, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do the evaluation, and it's asking me of my department.
Yeah.
I only see public admin, accounting, finance,
marketing.
Yeah, okay.
Department is marketing. Don't forget your level is level 600. Yeah.
600. Okay. All right.
There is no level 5. Your level is 600.
And we went to choose level 100.
Then you have to go to first year.
Do you want to join them? I can bring you to my class.
Oh, no. But it was misleading. So some people chose level 100.
So, Doc.
Yes,
Do we have level 1000?
No, it's terminal. Level 700 is the last. That's PhD. And I expect a lot of you to come to our PhD programs. Take the challenge, especially the ladies. I want to see. Sorry.
We advise somebody to do a PhD here in Ghana.
Seriously, yeah.
Why not?
You see,
Doc, did you have yours here? Did you have your PhD in Ghana?
No, he's a Denmark trained.
No, sorry. Separate Britain. Yeah. Yeah, I studied in England, so.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's
we're talking about England.
Grace, Linda, I expect
that's why your accent is foreign.
His accent is not here. It's not here.
That's why you slang.
It's a little bit broken. It's just like David and what do you call this guy?
Yao Mensa.
No, Yao. I've forgotten. David and
Samuel.
David and Samuel.
What did Samuel do? What did Samuel do?
But you people were saying that I do not stand.
and Daniel as well. It's a little bit broken. You try to tame it, but Anyway.
Nice one.
All right, thanks, guys. Hope to see you in next week. Is it next week?
Sure.
See you, Doc.
Bye. See you.
It's very exciting to be in your class.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really I appreciate it. All right.
Very interactive. Very interactive.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bridget.
Bye.
Bye.
Bridget.